In this quick demo, I would like to show you various options we have with Fusion and Blender to generate ring, point, or surface structures on an object. I will start with a model I have actually in Fusion, so you understand how to get this over into Blender and then to project something over it. Obviously, if you started sculpting a certain part in Blender and you want to create the structure in Blender, then we can do it right in there. So, but in the case you have something in Fusion, we would like to get this over to Blender. So right click onto the body inside the browser, save as. We want to have a high refinement, so a fine mesh. Okay, and let's say I call this one handle. Good. Let's go to Blender. Here I will import the handle, and I know size-wise I will have to adjust this. Okay, so now it's 4 centimeters by 2. Perfect. Also, again, as a small demo, you see X, Y, and Z is 0. Let's go to Fusion, X, Y, and Z 0. So you see the object snap into the same position. So let's start with a very basic pattern. Let's say some spheres on that surface. So I can create a mesh. In edit mode I adjust it, and then in object mode I move it to somewhere else, let's say there. Okay, and in edit mode I might subdivide it a few times. Okay, so this now will be my projection surface. So I will shrink wrap this one onto this, maybe along the Z direction using negative direction. See, this is positive Z, where the blue arrow points, so the opposite is negative Z. Okay, good. Now the next step is important to keep in mind. You see where the object center of the mesh is. That is where with Shift S we will position the cursor, because then there we can create a cube. I will use a cube quickly in this demo. If you want to work with a good sphere, then obviously I would suggest to use the quad ball mesh. Okay, so let's make a cube. 2 millimeters. Okay, Control A, apply scale. Perfect. So this mesh and the cube, I will move on to a second layer. So we will select the cube, shift select the mesh, Control P, parent the cube to the mesh, and then we will select the mesh, go to object properties. I will go to vertices and say rotation. If I want to do a quick preview how this will look with a subdivision surface added to it, so it's closer to how it will look with T-splines, I can do that. And there we are. You can clearly see that the spheres sit nicely centered, more or less, on that surface. But I would like the spheres to be a little bit more inside my handle. I have some options. For example, I can move the sphere here along Z up and down, but that is not really what I like to do. I want to keep, because Blender is very particular about where my object is in relationship to the projection mesh, because that actually will generate an offset, and thus I don't want to change that. So I always have everything perfectly centered. I can instead simply give this projected mesh a small offset into my handle. There we see how it's offset now, and that, as you can see, will do my offset for my spheres. Perfect. Okay, so let's say this is what I like. We can select everything, Shift D, Escape, M and 3, put onto a different layer, because then I can select this object, Then I will say apply, make a duplicate. All this actually I can delete. And all these spheres I will export, because this has to go to T-splines this time as OBJ. I will not apply the modifier, but Z is up and Y is forward. Let's say here spheres. Let's go back to Fusion. Now we can create a T-spline feature. Insert mesh, spheres. Okay, meter is good. Let's convert it. Finish form. And now you see T-spline created all these spheres after clicking finish form. Fusion created all those NURBS spheres for me. They're all solid, and now I can combine all those together, or for example cut them out. There, easy peasy. That's the way how you can create very quickly such a structure by, for example, having a geometry handle in Fusion, and then in Blender we bring it over and generate the structure we want to cut out and get it back. Okay, so that was one way how to do it. Let me show you what else we can do. Let's say at that same position we would like to have a plus sign or symbol. Okay, so I will make a mesh roughly of the size I want, 2 centimeters, whatever. And then I can, for example, subdivide this one twice, because then click, 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 delete. I have a plus. Now this plus I can shrink wrap onto my object, project along Z, negative. Then I can add a solidify modifier, maybe 2 millimeters. And this is now something that's important to understand. So let's make a cut section view with Alt B. You see the whole stuff is inside. If I set this to 1, there's a little bit of air in between my my plus and the surface, and I want this handle to be only 1 millimeter above the surface. So I made this 2 millimeters because I will set the offset to 0, so my plus is nicely centered, and now I can go ahead and give this subdivision surface modifier. And for example, now I can see from the side how far is this plus really inside my mesh, with how much. And here, this is roughly the 50% mark. I can see this nicely with the polygon edge. And I can drag this in a little bit like this. There, perfect. So what I will bring over is just only this plus, including the shrink wrap and the solidify. The sub-D I do not. Export, structure, apply modifier in this case, export. Let's go back. Let's make another feature, insert, structure, meter, click, click, click. Okay, finish form, combine, ching, ching, tack. Okay, and there we are. Okay, super easy. And then we can go ahead and even there add a nice fillet. Oops, and that one is tiny. 0.5 there. So now we have a really nice transition from the handle into that smooth and organic looking plus icon. So let's see what else we can do. Let's go back. Let's put this onto another layer. Okay. So now we would like to create maybe some rings, and we can do something similar in Fusion. So maybe let's for that actually remain in Fusion for a second, and then I can show you what in addition we can do with the other approach. Ooh, there. Okay, let's turn this off. So I have here one sketch, and the sketch, as you can see, uses a pattern, and with this pattern I created a lot of lines. So here I used the rectangular pattern tool. Okay, so that's pretty nice. Now I can make a new sketch. It doesn't really matter what orientation, because this sketch will be a 3D sketch. And then I can go to Sketch, Project, Project to Surface, this surface, Curve, and then you. Well, you get the idea. In case you get some errors like this, it's probably because your projection type isn't really selected yet. We want to cut it through the surface, and where it cuts, it will create the curve. So we need to define actually a direction. And I can say, for example, select the direction, this one, or select, for example, this one. You don't necessarily have to do it in this case. It automatically understands which direction, because it uses actually the normal of the sketch direction, which in our case is along Z. Okay, anyway, so this way now we have all these curves there. And what can we do with this now? We could, for example, select a pipe command and say join this one. Okay, works good. Let's go back. We could also say, let's make a new sketch. In my case, I can do it actually on this construction plane, so that is good. And I want to find the intersection of these projected rings or lines and my sketch plane. You see now there I have all these nice dots. So what was important about these dots? Well, there, for example, I can now start and create, for example, a structure of my desire, or something like this. Maybe actually this does not make any sense, because this will run into my object. So maybe from there to there and there. Okay, and ching ching ching, click click click. Okay, just make these two. So you can see now where actually these sketches are, and then when I use the sweep command, and let's say select this one and this one along this profile, cut that pattern out. So now with the pipe command, it's a nice circular or square or triangle, but then this way for each one I can create my own pattern. Okay, but the downside for that is unfortunately we are only able to do lines that are nice and parallel. On the positive side is, if that is really what you need, then perfect, then we have it. But in case we want to sculpt this more, then this process actually in this case is too limiting. So in that case, now for example, we can use Blender in this case. So what we'll do now is we will here create a circle. And I know that with 6 vertices, I will get away. So 2 centimeters, there is my circle. In edit mode, RX and 90, I will add a subdivision modifier, project it. I will move this one to Z0, so it's centered with my handle. And then in edit mode, S and X, S and Z, get it close. Move this one to there. Perfect. So I would like to create a nice pattern. So in edit mode, E and Y, I can, for example, create a tube. So this tube maybe should be 2 centimeters. Okay, great. Now I can go ahead, because I measured the distance. Well, how many rings do we want? Well, we can figure that out via the loop cut. So this is a little bit not as elegant as the pattern tool in Fusion, because in Fusion with the pattern tool in a sketch, as I showed you here, we can even just make a pattern with a sketch, thin line. Fortunately, Blender works with the array command based on an object volume, but sketches don't have a volume, so we can't really use this. But we can simply create a surface which measures the length of the distance, and then via the loop cuts we just create the amount of lines we need. And there we are. Perfect. So loop cut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Shift D and escape. We make a copy, P and separate. And then maybe here the surface, I move for the moment to somewhere else. So there you see now, there is all my profiles. Okay, so those I will now shrink wrap onto the cylinder. In this case here, I will not use project along a certain direction because I want to shrink to it already along Z and X. And most times there are also some problems that happen. Yeah, there you can see what's going on there. Let's see if we can turn Y off. And yeah, Control N. Can we maybe fix this? No, yeah, because it's on the surface. Those are lines. So Blender gets a little bit confused with the project command. So surface works best. Okay, so now I would like to create a pipe along this. And we can use the skin command, and then you will see this. Not a big deal, we just have to zoom out, and what you see there is a lot of solid rings. So what we can do now is to basically, now what you see is just a huge square pipe along those ovals, and we have to scale them down. So we can go into edit mode. We can select everything, and then we can press Alt A, or you see here mean, radius, X and Y. That's actually the X and Y cross section. We can scale this one down. There. And for example, 3 zeros and 1. Okay, well, this is maybe a little bit too small, so 2, and there. Okay, good. And then here, at this point, we can select and say mark root, U, also mark root. And this mark root means wherever I have a root, the pipe starts to grow along. So for example, here it will grow along all this area and then skin it. Okay, cool. So this is actually a nice square module, and that, for example, we can later turn into a nice pipe if we want to take a look at it by giving it a sub D modifier. So this is really, really good for sculpting kind of tube structures. Let's make this shaded smooth. Okay. Oh, that's actually there, and shade smooth. Okay, perfect. So what else can we do? Because you would say, well, this is pretty much the same like the pipe command, and that's true. But I mentioned with the pipe command, you're kind of limited to only what you can project via the sketch. And when we use something like this, we have a different flexibility. So because this is a skin result that is based on a shrink-wrapped geometry, I can now start manipulating my geometry. And you see here I can, for example, create a small let's say offset. Maybe here the same, so a tick and a tick and a tick. There. Huh? Pretty nice. So there you can see already it has a lot of interesting applications. To make this a little bit better, we can actually turn proportional editing on. G and Y. Let's make this smaller. And let's maybe go this way. So how much do we go? 2.2. We have to be careful actually with the number. There. So 2.2 millimeters. That's the amount I moved it. Okay, and if I want to do the same on the other side, select it, G and Y minus 0.002 to there. Okay, perfect. So what do I bring over now to Blender? Well, the last sub-D, that one we don't need, but we need the first sub-D so we don't get this over, because this will look later like this. That's not really what we want. Because essentially what the skin command is doing, it takes kind of like a cube, as you can see, and runs it across the surface. So this is actually what we export. So first sub-D, shrink, and then the skin. Export obj. Structure. Yep, that's all good. Let's go to Fusion. Another T-splines. And insert. Structure. Okay. Convert it. Okay, so it's pretty dense, but when we convert this, it goes pretty fast. There we are. Great. Okay, you see, quite easy. So the last thing I would like to show is maybe, let's say we want to grow a surface along different directions over this body. Okay, so let's make a plane. In object mode, we move it maybe to there, scale it down, and well, we'll work with symmetry, so I only have to do half of it. So mirror modifier first along Y, no, X. Okay, there it is. I will try to get this as close as possible, and now I will turn a sub-D on and then move this one down, and I will pay a little bit of attention to how it kind of like flows along the surface. Okay, good. And here, and there, and there, and there. Let's say there, it's good. Okay. So here maybe we will extrude it along Y till there. and then E, E, and E. Okay. So this now we could, in addition, shrink wrap onto this. So let's take a look from the top, turn it on and off to see if there are any deformations, but this seems to work pretty well. What happens if we use actually project instead? Can turn all these on. Control N. There is something interesting happening there. Yeah. Perfect. So there it is. Actually, the axis we don't have to turn on. It does it for us. So how does it go? It actually works pretty good. What's the difference to there? Not really a big difference, actually. A tiny bit. Yeah. Okay. So when we turn this on, we actually can see where the surface is projected on it. And then the nice thing is I can continue modeling a surface over it. Get this maybe closer there. I use some kind of like this technique a lot when I was doing shoe design, because then I work actually with a three-dimensional surface, kind of like simulating, let's say, the fabric I'm bending. Okay, good. So this should not look like any recognizable in geometry. I am just messing around here. So there we have our thickness. Okay. So what do we actually get now over into to Fusion? So if this is turned off, let's say at the end now we turn something on. How does this look? Okay, are there any problems with it? There you see how this shrinks. So we want to have one or two levels of subdivision modifier at the beginning, because it creates more squares, and all these squares will be kind of like put onto the surface. This doesn't have to be something very high. Obviously, the more points, the better it matches or flows, but at a certain point this is just getting too much. And maybe not one, but two, I think, seems to do the job pretty good. I also would like to maybe have nice and sharp edges. So let's see if we can maybe crease this. There. This is good. Okay. Nice. And then we do the same, the solidify modifier we can include as well, because I want to have this 50%, and thickness in Fusion for T-splines only goes one direction. It can't, unfortunately, at the moment say 50-50 or something like this. And then obviously the last sub-D we don't need. So let's bring this one over, structure, export, and then in Fusion, another T-splines, insert mesh. There's a structure. Okay. Let's convert this one. The T-spline will make it nice and soft for us. Finish form. And there we are. Perfect. And we could join it, cut it out, or whatever you would like to do. Okay, so I think this basically sums up everything. The last thing I would like to go back to talk about is, let's go to this one here, because we didn't really talk about proportional editing. So let's say I would like to scale actually the outer points and these corners smaller, and then to the center the scaling should fall off. Again, this works best by using proportional editing, and I select these corner points, and then via the mouse wheel I can adjust the influence. But you see this, the objects move, and to prevent this we simply turn on the manipulate only the control or the object center point. So, and individual origin. Never mind. Oh, sorry, forget actually this one. I said I had a brain hiccup. What I meant was we want to turn on the individual origins. So you see the objects don't move, but when I scale them, I just scale the objects right at the position where they are. And there, and then this way I can create a structure where you can see that dots are getting bigger or smaller. We can, for example, instead of doing it this way, we select all those, S and Y. Oh, I turned proportional off. There, now you see they are from the top getting bigger, 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 bigger. So pretty nice, huh? Okay, so proportional editing, and then make use of individual origins because we don't want to move the sphere objects, we want them to stay. We just want to adjust the size right where they are. So to bring this to an end, there is maybe one very popular structure that is left to maybe talk about, and that is a structure of maybe pyramids or something. So how can we, for example, do this? So let's take a look. We brought the geometry over from Fusion, and now I will try to create maybe or recreate something that is similar. So I will create myself an ellipse that is pretty much the same. So you see I used the 6-point circle and then a sub D modifier. Let's apply the scale, and then E and Y, bring this over. Okay, good. And let's see how many faces we have there. Okay. Okay, there, it's good. I'm trying to see how does this rectangle look like. That one looks pretty good. Okay, let's make a copy of this one and back it up. And now I will apply this sub D modifier. So I have something that's way too dense. No, that's fine. We can fix this. So I want 1, 2, 3, let's say 4. Delete the faces. And then I will scale this one. Yeah, good. So, and now with all these faces created, I can with Alt P poke the face. And you see when I press Alt P, I think it's under here, Alt P poke face, it actually creates a dot and 2 diagonals. And now I want to select all these dots. Yeah. And now how do I select the rest? So I could go to select and Shift G, similar amount of adjunct. No. Okay, Shift G. Yeah, so basically nearly worked, but it selected also these outer edges, but with the middle mouse button and B, I can deselect them. Okay, great. Now all this is selected, and I can, for example, scale them, but you see, I can only scale along like in a circular way. What about I press S and Shift Y? But you see, it's kind of not going along the normal, so not very good. What about I go use the normal, but that doesn't unfortunately work. So what can I do best? Well, in this case, we can add a vertex group, assign all these points, and then we simply offset them. This vertex group by 0.1. There. Maybe less. There. Yeah. And there you can see how now nicely they all face exactly to the outside. And when I put this to there, now you can see now we have a nice structure. This whole object, maybe I can shrink a little bit. Actually, at the beginning, I will do that. So, tuck. 1. Just a tiny bit. Okay, so, and minus. So it's inside. Oh, what's going on? Hold on 1 second. 1 millimeter. There. Okay, so there you see now these pyramids are coming from the inside, penetrating the outer surface. We will have a little bit of a small gap in between, and that can be adjusted by how much we do this offset. So we can do it small enough so it works, and make it or big enough that it works, and make it small enough that we don't see it. And also keep in mind, when we zoom in, things can look really big, but later when we 3D print it, that can be just a tiny hairline. Okay, there's only one problem left, and what's not elegant is these pyramids have different sizes, so that's not really nice. So how do I do actually this better? Well, in that case, we have to do the following. So I will create myself a Bezier spline, and let's scale everything down. Let's turn this one off, and this one I want to selection to curler, AA and V. Okay, I move this one up. I will turn snapping to vertex on and snap it to this point. Okay, then I will G and Z snap to there, G and X snap to there. Perfect. One more. G and X snap to there, G and Z. Okay, one more. G and Z, G and X, always holding control while snapping. There, and then we want this one to be closed. Toggle cyclic. Okay, in the toolbar. Okay, then I can go ahead, A, V, and say automatic. Does it work? No. Close U and U. S and Z scale. So I try to get a nice representation of my surface I have. And I'm pretty close actually. Good. So this is actually a bent curve. At this point, there, I will start with a small rectangle. This rectangle I will cut into half and remove this part. because from here I want now to array this. Now they have a square. Okay. Ding, 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 ding. Can A and, for example, poke this one. Whoa, what happened? Alt P. Just not only P. And I can bring this one up. Okay, so what's the whole deal about this? Well, I can use the spline to bend this along. Okay. That's interesting. What's going on there? There's no tilt or anything happening. So I might have to see what the problem there is. Zero tilt. Is anything rotated? No, nothing got rotated. Okay, hold on. What about the Bezier circle? Can scale this one down. Okay. And R and X there. Scale. I'm just curious what happens. So cursor to selected. Set the 3D cursor to there. Here, cursor to selection and selection to there. And you know, please run along this one. Okay, I must have maybe twisted this a little bit, but you see we can also start working with a circle and then we deform it. There are tools properly to switch the direction. Okay, so it's inside out. And then here we scale everything up till it fits, and then we scale everything apart. Okay, and then here those we scale along the Z. Let's see, why doesn't this work? Okay. V and aligned, maybe that was the reason for it. S and Z, yeah, there. S and Z, perfect. Okay, quick curiosity, why is this one rotated? No, okay. That's probably why it starts actually there. Okay, so cursor to selected. Here, selection to cursor. And a 3D cursor. Okay, so now you see when we turn the normal on, you can actually see kind of like the direction of the normal, all these arrows. So that's kind of like the X direction also. And this mesh grows towards the X direction. So click, 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 click. Obviously now this is open, so this spline in edit mode we need to close, and then we need at one point to figure out how do we invert this. Okay. Close, and yeah, so what do we do now? You see, it doesn't really fit. So first step I can do is in edit mode, there's my 3D cursor. So I select everything, and to the 3D cursor I will scale, and you see this is getting close, and then I will get them close to there, and then when I go and select the curve and say stretch and bound clamp, it basically takes a structure and stretches it along only the length of that curve. Perfect. Okay, so that is fixed. Now the cool thing is we can increase the amount, let's say 40. But if we do this, we need to be careful that we don't deform it too much. So maybe we have to scale everything a little bit this way, so we get kind of like squares again. Okay. And then there we just invert it. AA, Control N. And there, we have flipped the direction. Perfect. So let's say we only have a tube, then that's good. Now we only have to make one master, and along Y there, click, click, click. Can actually select the whole object, move it inwards. There we are. Okay, you see, pretty awesome. So one very easy way to make grip structures this way, if we want to bend it along, for example, an elliptical surface. Obviously, when you have a straight tube, this is even easier, because then all we need to do is cursor to center. Let's create a circle, let's say 64 points, E and Z, Control N. No, I just want to make sure I add as much loop cuts I need. There. Okay, now I select this whole section, Alt P to poke. Select this point, Shift Z, amount of there. Deselect and deselect. And now, because this is a circle here, S and Shift Z, I can scale them out, and there I am. Perfect. So the question then would only be, well, how do I get this stuff into Fusion? Here, let me remove actually these faces, there, there, and there, and there. And that actually, let's say I want to get into a design. So export OBJ, and okay, let's go to Fusion. I will just make a new design. So I will not use the T-spline, because T-spline is basically useful for sub-D stuff, so smooth surfaces. In this case here, we just have something that's linear, pyramids. So I will use a base feature. Get this over, structure, and okay. So then I will go to modify and mesh to B-wrap, click OK. And now Fusion will take all these polygon faces, and as you can see, will recreate flat NURBS faces for me. So it's pretty awesome. Can click OK, and there we are. So let's say I would like this to be inside a design. The only tricky part is now, how do I actually manage to join kind of like a new cylinder and this structure? So here, maybe go to there, because this all looks very round, but if we zoom in enough, you see this is still a face. So I will make one sketch here just for the sake of science. So patch model, revolve, okay, I have to adjust the edge, hold on. U to U, and U to U. There. Let's go revolve. There to there. Okay. And then let's see if we can use the loft. So U to U. Cross fingers, and Fusion does it for us. That's a pretty computation intensive task, so I will pause actually the video. When it's done, I will come back. And there we are now. And you see there's the transitional surface between the nice and smooth cylinder and the rather linear grip area. Little tip, I would, if you want to create something like this, maybe make the distance from there to there. It's actually only 1 millimeter. So in the CAD model, this looks huge, but in real life, you go and take a caliper, 1 millimeter is kind of tiny. We can make this even a little bit smaller. So you have a very, very small transition, and you can kind of hide this transition from flat faces to like round or flat profiles to round profiles. Okay, so I think that's one of the easiest ways how to create such a linear structure on a rectangular object, or in other case, if we have this ellipse, then we can use the same system and then patch it in.